Japan has lost about 20% of its nuclear power because of the disaster at the Fukushima plant. Now it's scrambling for other sources. The country probably will turn to liquefied natural gas and the companies that can mobilize huge quantities of that fuel across oceans. Jason Gammel of Macquarie Capital Europe is one of the most accurate forecasters on Exxon. He's with us from London this morning. Jason, it is an awful way to have to think about the implications of the Japanese quake, but there will be winners in the corporate world. In the world of liquefied natural gas, who are they going to be?
Well, and again, the human toll is probably the most important thing right now. But when we look at who can actually mobilize incremental power into Japan, liquefied natural gas is going to be an important component of that. BG Group in the UK, Royal Dutch Shell, ExxonMobil are the three companies that really have a lot of flexibility in their LNG system and are looking to free up cargoes right now to actually move into Japan as quickly as possible.
Jason, Exxon and Shell are gigantic companies. Is the situation in Japan and the amount of LNG that it is going to require over the months and years ahead, because we expect these reactors will never come online given what's going on, is that enough to move the needle at companies this size?
It begins to move the needle, and that's because really what we're looking at in Japan right now is potentially 5% of the LNG market now having to shift over to Japan incrementally. That's enough that you can really start to see movements in prices. We don't know exactly where they're going to move, but LNG prices right now are around $10 into North Asia. That could go to 15. And when you look at, in particular, Royal Dutch Shell, something like 20% of their production volumes are actually in the form of LNG.
So it's not just Japan, it's the knock-on effect that higher prices have on the LNG business throughout that part of the world. How about elsewhere? Are, say, American companies going to be able to take advantage of this? We hear all the time about the surplus of natural gas here in the United States, and the reason that gas prices are so out of whack with oil prices. Is over time, is some of that gas going to find its way to Asia or to other markets as a result of this?
I believe you're correct over time, but I think the problem is that's going to be a 7+ year type of time frame. I think if you're rightly looking at LNG as replacing nuclear in Japan, I think that those companies that can actually take advantage of it that are American companies are probably ConocoPhillips in the near term, because they actually have volumes from Qatar and Australia that they may be able to contract into Japan. And then ExxonMobil again and Chevron would be the other two. This is really going to be something that affects the big integrated companies, not the natural gas producers locally in the United States.
Jason, have you looked out? Clearly, you are looking out into the future, talking about 5-7 years and more. But how about the potential freeze, let's say, or chill on nuclear development in other countries? Do you anticipate that LNG is going to become a more popular alternative for countries that are reconsidering nuclear development plans?
Well, and even just stepping back one more point, if carbon emissions are going to be an important criteria for how we develop power in the future, nuclear and natural gas are really going to be the competing fuels, along with renewables, which are a much smaller component of the market. If you do take nuclear out of the equation, then that just does make natural gas, and probably more in the form of LNG, that much more important of a fuel moving forward. That's one of the reasons that we like Exxon and Shell, is that they have recognized this advantage of natural gas and LNG and are positioned to take advantage of those trends.
Jason, thanks very much for helping us follow that story. The demand for LNG in Japan as a result of the nuclear disaster. Jason Gammel of Macquarie Capital. He says it is enough to move the needle for Exxon and Shell.